Isaiah chapter 8, verse 17. This is the verse. And I will wait on the Lord, who hides his face from the house of Jacob. And I will hope in him. This is a personal response to God's message as it is outlined in the preceding 4 verses. This is the core value of this particular verse. Isaiah is saying this: what others may do, he will wait on the Lord. He will put his hope in him, in the Lord. Even though God hides his face from the house of Jacob, which is really Israel, and by extension Judah. But God does not arbitrarily hide his face from man or a nation. It is when man and the nation walks away from God. And so he says this, and this is the message. Our strengths, his strengths, my strengths, your strengths, never lies in a close association with the world, as Ahaz tried to associate with Assyria in order to resist Syria and the northern 10 tribes, hoping to secure his kingship in Judah. It was wrong. He should have relied on God. In other words, our strength lies not in close association with the world, but in complete separation from it. That's where the strength is. His confidence, his promises, they will sustain us.
Study more. Father in heaven, thank you so much for your blessings, for your word, because we have the opportunity to learn from the mistakes of Ahaz. Let us to put our trust on you when we can't see any better, Father. In the middle of the trouble, of uncertainties, may we rely on you, because we know that you never will hide from us. You're always reaching out to save us, and we are so thankful for that. Help us to understand your words. In Jesus' name we ask. Amen. Amen. So there is always that expression, that you want to go the easy way or the hardest way, right? And I think I told this before. Some of you may remember. God gave us this liberty. We can choose. And sometimes I'm wondering, if, because we're always making like the wrong decisions, but that's how God is. Will be against his character to do otherwise. So we have the ability to choose. And we will see that because of our choices, unfortunately, sometimes other people will suffer the consequences as well, as in the case of this king, Ahaz. We are studying basically the chapter 7, a few verses, and chapter 8 of Isaiah. So if you want to open Isaiah chapter 7 and 8, this is where we're going to be talking about it. And memory text was Isaiah 8:17. Thank you. It says, I will wait on the Lord, who hides his face from the house of Jacob, and I will hope in him. So it's not really that God was hiding his face, but because of the choice of Ahaz and the people, they were suffering the consequences. There is a beautiful illustration here that I heard actually many times, and I'm not tired of it. I don't think I ever gonna get tired of it, because it brings a wonderful truth. It's about a little girl that was in this building, 4-story building, and the building was caught on fire. Now, firemen came, but they weren't able to get to her. The fire truck couldn't get in between the buildings. The ladder couldn't get up there to get her. And there was another detail. She couldn't see. She was blind. So they would tell her by the, what do they call it, the horn?
Megaphone?
Megaphone. Yeah. They would tell her, but, you can jump. There is a net over here. She wouldn't do it. Pretty soon her dad came by. And he told her, you can jump. There is a net over here. So she heard the voice of the Father, and she did. She couldn't see, but she trusted him. And she was so in peace that she didn't break any bones. She didn't even suffer any bruises, because she trusted the Father. And the lesson here is God is telling us so many times, trust me, don't be afraid. In the case of the Ahaz, God says, don't be afraid, don't lose your heart, he said, for those 2 smoldering stubs of firewood. In other words, they were gone. And unfortunately, basically Ahaz, as the leader, he refused to trust. But we have to think about this in our own life as we face our own struggles. And sometimes you can't see past those struggles, even though God is telling us, jump, there is a net over here. I'm your Savior. I'm going to do this for you. And we are so hesitant. And that's why I love studying this, the scriptures, because they have so many examples of how hard it is to trust, even though God is saying, and how God is always reaching. Because as you remember, the chapter 7 talks about this prophecy that was fulfilled. We're going to get into it. And then chapter 8 basically repeats the same thing as inviting again. And this is what God is doing for us. So the same way as in this illustration, God provides powerful evidence that he wants the best for his children. But they rejected the gentle flowing way, the easy way, first presented to them. Thus he had to speak to them with a roar and a flood instead. So if it's not going to be the easy way, it's going to be the hardest way. Another way to put it is, you always hear that we should put God first in our lives. Yes, we should. Now, if we don't, God is still going to be first. In other words, if you don't go the easy way, if you don't accept the invitation, whether we want it or not, God's plans is not going to be stopped. But he always is trying to reach us, through experiences, through troubles. And I mentioned here the other day, how we all want a miracle to happen in our lives, but we don't want to be faced with what it takes for a miracle to happen. Don't we want to see the Red Sea opening? Yes, we do, but we don't want to be confronted with the Red Sea, do we? So we need to think about those things. Let's read, can somebody read Isaiah 7, 14 through 16?
Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son. Thou shalt call his name Emmanuel. Butter and honey shall he eat, that he may know to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the child shall know to refuse the evil and to choose the good, the land that thou abhorrest shall be forsaken of both her kings.
Mhm. We just had Daniel not too long ago. So how long does it take for a child to know or to choose food, to know what's good, what's bad, more or less? You know, we have to count it since the conception because this child was not born yet. So we counted it 9 months before birth, and then how long after would they know a little bit or start choosing, be picking on what they want to eat or not? 1 year, maybe 2 years, right? They would maybe start making those decisions. And then you see that, this prophecy was actually given in the 734, and about 2 years later, 732, the prophecy was fulfilled. And interestingly, more in the chapter 8, we're going to read that too. Isaiah actually registered the son, and he made sure that we had witness about all of this, because for sure this will be fulfilled, and then they would have proof. Even in this secular world, people would look back, yes, this was said by the Lord, and then this was fulfilled. Because as I said, sometimes it's hard to believe, isn't it? So the other thing that unfortunately happened here, well, first of all, let's go back to this. So the child had to, why does Isaiah 7:15 mention curds and honey? That boy would have to eat. What happened to the land as part of the fulfillment of the prophecy?
It was laid waste.
Uh-huh, yeah. So where they had vines and good produce,
Couldn't grow anything.
nothing, right? So as they were deprived of all of that, but there is another lesson. Always God provided. So they had what to eat. They had what they need the most, even though they were in trouble times. Always for us to look back that God always will provide. And I'm sure, what we need the most, He always provides. So when was the prophecy regarding Syria and northern Israel fulfilled? The lesson lays out here. 734 BC was when it was given, and by 732, within about 2 years of Isaiah's prediction, Syria and Israel had been conclusively defeated, and it was all over for the two kings. So God told Ahaz, right, that they were just two smoldering stubs of firewood. He didn't have to make any alliance. But again, if we think about it, what if it was me or you in that situation? You're being threatened with literally war, being taken apart, taken to prison, or maybe being killed. Isn't it easier to trust what you see?
And what you can't see.
If we have the best army in the world, USA is the greatest, but even in our days we see this. It doesn't matter if we are the best country in the world, we have the best army. You see, we're all being affected right now in a different way. So our trust should be, as the memory text says, we wait in the Lord. Always. There is no other way. And so I want us to think about this as we look back in the history. Because when we look back, it's easier. You should have trust, right? Yeah, looking back is always easier. But we all confront problems and doubts. And as we look back, that should help us to make a decision. Yes, please.
as I look back at last week when I gave the Bible study, I felt like I should have said, the Lord really loved Ahaz, even though he was not a good king, because he told him exactly what would happen. Ahaz did not trust. He gave Ahaz a sign with the child, and Ahaz rejected it.
That's right.
So the Lord loved him. He did not want Ahaz to be lost.
Exactly. And in the same way, he doesn't want
It's
any
with
of us.
everybody, each one of us, yeah.
And he's reaching out. Yeah, I love your point.
Yeah.
Because this is what the Lord does. He reaches out to us all the time. I remember also last week's lessons, which is a continuation here, as Lord tell Isaiah where to find Ahaz to talk to him at the aqueduct. He gave the address. In my mind is, Lord knows where you are. He knows your address. And also he knows what you're going through. So he's reaching out. I know what's going on with you right now. I can help you. And we are, I don't think so. I don't want to do this. But he's reaching and he knows. So Monday, foreseeing consequences. What is going on with the clock there?
Yeah, it must be wrong.
Isaiah, I think so.
Goes too quick.
Isaiah 7:17 through 25. So we're just going to talk about it. The time is running quickly. So after we read those verses, what is the Lord describing that will happen to the land? And we actually talked about that a little bit already. And why should we not be surprised at this outcome? Was predicted, right? So the Lord will bring on you and your people and on the house of your fathers a time unlike any seen. Ephraim broke with Judah. Since Ephraim broke with Judah. So it was a time where the land wouldn't produce. They would have the minimum for survival, but it wouldn't be a good time at all. And 2 Kings 16:10 talks about, that is an important point here, after Ahaz made the coalition and apparently he was saved initially, he goes to Damascus, visit that king, Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria, and he saw there the altars. And putting in my own words, he liked it. And he looks at their military power and how they were conquering nations, and he says, well, their God must be a good God. I'm not saying there is no God in Israel, but they might be good, so I want to make an altar. And here is where things starts going really downhill. He comes back to Israel, he makes a replica, and he starts offering sacrifices and giving offerings and taking from God's temple. So that's how he went downhill. Now, looking at the power that was in front of him, he trusted them more than trusting the Lord. I'd like for us to read 2 Corinthians 4:18. How long do I have, Esther? Ben, how long do I have?
I think that's right. You got about 20 minutes.
Oh,
15
okay,
minutes.
that's good. For some reason, I thought it was 10:30. So let's read 2 Corinthians 4:18. And I have a personal experience about this. I mean, not close personal experience. 2 Corinthians 4:18. Can somebody read that?
While we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal.
Mm-hmm. The same, coming back to the same point. Who can help me now, right? But the Lord is the one that can help us. But a lot of times we can't see, and if we're not in His presence every day, we will forget. You know, we need to be coming back every day, but ideally the first hours of the morning. We have a friend, he's a musician. Used to work in one of the biggest colleges down in Brazil, São Paulo. You know, he would direct the choir and write music and all that. One day he came to visit in Dallas, and we went pick him up in the airport, and we noted that he had a droop eye. I don't think he realized it. So then we talked to him, and I want to make the story short, but he was diagnosed with a tumor in his brain, and he went downhill quickly. He was young, how old more or less? He was,
He's in his 20s.
in his 20s, very young, but always dedicated to the Lord, his family, everybody. And in his last moments, he actually wrote the song. You know, I'm sure that all Brazil, because it's thinking about him now, maybe because of this lesson about 2 Corinthians 4:18, that I don't look for the things, you know, that we can see that's going to go away, maybe tomorrow, maybe in a year. But it's for the things that we can't see that are eternal. And that's what we should do, you know, look beyond the problem and beyond the situation. So that was really touching, and unfortunately, we may think, why did that happen, right? Lord knows, we don't. And that's why we need to trust. What is in the name Tuesday? They started here in a way that is like funny, right? What if you're playing ball with Isaiah's son, Isaiah 8:110? I don't even know how to pronounce
It's
it.
got every letter in the alphabet.
Yeah, Maher Salah. By the time you tell his name,
It's too late. Yeah.
it's too late.
It's all over.
Yeah. Except though, if you was soccer in Brazil, like you probably heard about Pelé, right? His name is Edson Arantes do Nascimento. That's not how you say. You say Pelé here, right? You know, you would find a nickname for him, or actually they just look, they know. You gotta throw the ball to me. But it was funny. But the thing here is that what does it mean, right? What does it mean? And again here, before they say in a different way, before the boy knows to say mom or dad, what the prophet is saying is going to be fulfilled. So it's a repetition of the same prophecy. It's in other words, God's calling us in different ways. God says, if I can't touch the right side of your brain, let's try the left side now. And still they did not listen. But what they're saying, when does the child say mom or dad? Maybe at 1, right? And if you count the 9 months of conception, another 9 months. So we were about at that time, 2 years after the prophecy was given, it was fulfilled. And because Ahaz, he turned to Assyria, the names of Isaiah's sons refer to Judah as well as the northern Israel. And it's something that will come quickly. This is what the name actually means. A remnant shall return, and they shall return in a speedy way. So it would take about 2 years. And but there was still hope, because the name also meant or means a remnant shall return. Another, and you can stop me. I feel like I'm the only one talking. But I like to ask this question. Despite repeated mistakes on the part of his professed people, the Lord was still willing to save them. How can we take this principle and apply it to ourselves personally, especially when we fail and fall repeatedly? For me, I'll start, it's very comfortable. I feel comfort knowing that the Lord is reaching out, and He's here to save. You know, this son, the fulfillment of that prophecy at that moment, is they will be saved. They will be actually. They shouldn't have. They shouldn't be afraid, because those kings will be defeated anyway. This was the message. You know, don't be afraid. For us, it has a different meaning. It's the prophecy. We think of this as Emmanuel, as Jesus, which is God with us, and actually it goes beyond, because what Jesus does is what? Save us. Not from other nations, other powers in this world, but from sin. And what he's giving is eternal salvation. It's not a moment of peace between neighbors, other countries. So it's much more, and he's reaching out in different ways. And even though I know I fall and I have mistakes, we can have comfort that he's calling. Nothing to fear when we fear God himself. So if we maybe talking to somebody that doesn't believe God, or would sound a little bit different, right? You have nothing to fear if you fear God. They say that when we had the Great Depression, President Franklin Roosevelt told the people here, the only thing we have to fear is ourselves. Now the people of Judah is going through a depression, a time of great trouble. And what God's saying is, we have nothing to fear when we fear God himself. And this is what we have to keep in mind. How do you understand the idea of fearing God? What does it mean?
I mean, it's fear as in like reverence.
Mm-hmm.
Awestruck. We should be to even think of God. I mean, when we talk about God.
Mm-hmm. That's right. There are different kinds of fear, and I love the way lesson puts here. We can make a parallel. If someone with a lot of power, you can think of someone in this world, or you can think as God right now, which is our God. So, but if you think of this person as your friend, who you share mutual love, you do not fear that person or God himself will hurt us. But we have a kind of fear in the sense that we respect the power of that person or God, and we have some boundaries or relation in regards to our relation. But if you remember also the three angels' message, what does it say? Fear God, right? And give him glory. And it's not that we are afraid of him, because he is our friend, he is our lawyer, he is our judge, and we don't have to be afraid that he's against us. In the contrary, he's the one that saved us. I like to touch upon, is very important also this Thursday, gloom of the ungrateful living dead, and how things really went downhill with King Ahaz. So according to Isaiah 8:16-22, what is this passage talking about? What has this to do with the King Ahaz? What happened there? Can somebody summarize that for us? So he did something that was strictly prohibited, right? It was kind of an abomination for God. As he...
No, did he sought mediums and familiar spirits and totally against
Totally against what God says, yeah. And again, does that happen today?
Sure.
And a lot of times we don't even realize So we need to be very vigilant, of this, because it is still, that God does not change. This is still an abomination for God. And there is a message for us here to realize sometimes it's actually a little bit possible to be 100% away from this as you are doing something or watching something that might be okay, and in the middle they will show that, something that has to do with this various aspects of what they call it modern witchcraft. So sometimes you don't even know, and they are introducing that to our brains. We can see this.
Well, even the kids. I mean,
Exactly.
in their kids, the children's programs and stuff on TV. I mean, I'm just astounded at how they kind of present it. It's real subtle.
They are introducing to their brains, and as if it were okay. So we need to be aware of this. The lesson says, look around at your own life, at the influences around you. In what subtle ways are you exposed to the principles behind the occult and various manifestations of spiritualism? Yeah, sometimes, you see a program for a child, and then all the way, suddenly,
You're like, we're turning this off. Like, oh no.
different ways, yeah. There is a mom and daddy, and then there is a woman and woman daddy, and a man and man daddy, and all those things. And so we need to be vigilant and know that this is not okay. Because if you see it long enough, and then it seems like, well, it's okay.
Pretty normal.
Right? But it isn't. Isaiah's descriptions of despair resulting from reliance on spirits other than the Lord fits Ahaz well. Isaiah refers to people becoming enraged in cursing their kings. This would warn Ahaz that because he led the people into the occult, they would curse him. In fact, when Ahaz died, an exception was made regarding his burial due to lack of respect for him. They did not bring him into the tombs of the kings of Israel. They put him in a different place. People realized that, yes, he went overboard. But again, if you think about it, God came after him, the same way he does with us. And does anybody has anything he wants to add? I didn't want to be caught only on the history, but try to bring it to our days.
Yeah, it's really relevant.
And when you look back, it's easier, right? Well, if he knew, maybe he would be different. Well, in a way he knew. And for us, if we're going through a trouble, we know that God is in control, but how easy is it to stay, in the course and let God be God in our life, right? It's time to do that. I will wait on the Lord, who hides his face from the house of Jacob. I will hope in him. It's not that he hid his face, but the inevitable will come, which was the consequences. So I hope that as we continue to study the next lessons and the other in the Bible, we realize that our trust needs to be put in the Lord.